Have you ever been disrespected and felt like you only had two choices? You either fight back or you walk away and let people just walk all over you. But what if Jesus had taught us a third option? You see, many people believe that turning the other cheek meant that Jesus was teaching us to allow people to walk all over us like a doormat. But that's not what Jesus was teaching us. So in this video, we're going to discuss what Jesus meant by turning the other cheek and how doing so is leading us to stay in obedience to God. So let's get into the video. So let's start this video by discussing on how not to let anyone else's behavior control yours. So I'm going to reference scripture. We're going to go to Matthew 5:39. It says, "But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy left cheek, turn to them the other also." You see, Jesus was not teaching us to allow abuse or to allow disrespect from anyone. You see, in his culture, a slap on the right cheek meant a backhanded slap. And a backhanded slap was not used to injure someone. It was used to bring insult or to bring ridicule to someone. So what Jesus was actually teaching his followers is not to allow the behavior of others to control who we are. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about and take the time to think about a moment in your life where you allowed someone else's behavior to control yours and how it made you feel. Now, while you think about that, I want to share a personal testimony of mine. And this personal testimony is happened many years ago, where I used to work at a medical laboratory. Now, due to the keeping respect to everyone and to the company, I will not name names, but I just want to share my personal take on it and how I felt and how I reacted. So, many years ago, I worked in this medical laboratory where we used to create medical kits to test different kind of viruses, different kind of immunological diseases, so on and so forth. So this job, with time, I came to find out that a lot of people in there were very negative, were very toxic, and it just wasn't my vibe. It just wasn't who I was. But because I needed a job, I kept at it. I stayed there. Many years went by where my first supervisor had quit, had left, just because she had got tired of all the disrespect and just the lack of management to do something, and just everything that was going on. She just got tired and she just quit. She retired and she quit. And so then came another gentleman who became our supervisor. And I remember one thing that she said, to be careful with him, because if he were to come, it is better to leave. So I never thought much about it, because at a glance, since this gentleman was a supervisor from another department, didn't really interact with him that much. And when I did, you don't really see the full scope of who someone is. So many years went by. I worked at that company for 13 years. And I realized that not only him, but a lot of other people, had just a bad attitude. A lot of people were back talkers. A lot of people were just arrogant. They were rude, disrespectful. The jealousy was high. I mean, when I say the level of toxicity was high, I mean it was high. That it was like a melting pot. It was just one simple word can make everything blow up. And you know what? I struggled with it a lot. And the reason why I struggled with it a lot is because a lot of people will disrespect me in my face. People who were supposed to be management. So you think about people who are supposed to be in management positions are supposed to act or conduct themselves in a certain way, yet they never did. You know, fellow co-workers who had their own opinion about life, and because I wasn't living my life according to what they thought I was supposed to live, would honestly disrespect me. You know, I honestly had a lady who, quote unquote, told me that like I wasn't a man, that I wasn't living life because in my 20s I hadn't been married, I hadn't had kids, I haven't traveled the world. And so then another coworker actually, you know, agreed with her. And I'm not saying that they were right, I'm not saying they were wrong, because everyone is gonna have their own opinion about life. You know, everyone comes from a different walk of life, a different culture, a different way of doing things. So I do understand that in certain places of the world, in certain cultures, if you do not make yourself or become a made man or a made woman, meaning that you have a career, you're married, you have kids, you travel the world, then you're considered as nothing or less than nothing. But what kind of stuck a nerve with me is the audacity to say it in my face. And especially after me being, you know, a person that I never disrespected somebody, I never mistreated anyone. And so it was a tough time. You know, it was so difficult because I also allowed their opinions to control me, and my mind was just toxic. I wanted to hurt them. You know, there were people that I seriously wanted their lives to end. You know, because I was just led down this very dark hole because I allowed myself to be controlled by the opinions of others. People who I wouldn't even share a place at the table at, not even a glass of water. But unfortunately, that's where my mentality was at. And so I struggled with so many years because my mind was so full of negativity that I didn't even care about the job. You know, I wasn't even focusing. I would make mistakes. I would get called to the office. I would argue. I would get into people's faces that would disrespect me because I was not going to allow anyone to walk all over me. But the thing is that the damage was already done. You know, because once you allow a person to step on you one time, they're going to step on you always. Now remember what Jesus taught us, to turn the other cheek. Now he wasn't teaching us to allow people to disrespect us or to abuse us, but he was teaching us to handle ourselves in a respectful way. And I didn't handle myself. So thus I allowed myself to continue being disrespected and ridiculed. You know, and I reflect about it now many years, and I've made peace with it. I've prayed to God to forgive me for that time where my head was in the wrong place. I pray to God to forgive those people and to bless them. At the end of the day, you know, I put it in God's hands, because only God could decide what is the right thing to do. So I just wanted to share this personal testimony, you know, to just inspire someone who is going through something similar, where you're being disrespected from every corner, from behind you, from in front of you, from the sides, everywhere, and you feel like there is no way out. But you see this right here? This is the way out, and God is the way out. So I encourage you not to fall trap to other people's opinions, or other people's points of views, and just follow by the views of your one and only creator, which is God. Now, before we move on to the next section, I want you to take a moment and think about a moment in your life where someone disrespected you. And think about how you reacted. Now, according on how you reacted, you can answer this question. Did you allow someone else to determine how you feel or how do you react? Or did you yourself make the choice on how to react? You see, because this was Jesus was teaching us by turning the other cheek, not allowing anyone to take control of who we are. But then this brings another very important question, and that is, does turning the other cheek mean that we should allow other people to walk all over us? So stick to this video because we're going to talk about that next. So let's continue with discussing on how turning the other cheek doesn't mean having no boundaries. You see, Jesus wasn't teaching us to stay in abusive relationships or in sinful behaviors. Throughout the gospel, Jesus would walk away from hostile crowds, confront hypocrisy with truth, and not engage in foolish arguments. You see, being Christ-like doesn't mean being a people pleaser. It means that you are going to handle yourself in a way according to God's will. So the next time that someone disrespects you, just keep that in mind. Do you want to act in accordance to a sinful or abusive way? Or do you want to act accordingly to God's will? And by doing so, you could either do two options. Either you calmly say to the person, I won't allow you to speak to me that way. Or you just simply walk away and just leave the whole conversation or just the whole vibe or the whole energy. You see, peace and boundaries can coexist together. Healthy boundaries protect your peace without poisoning your heart. You know, you can forgive someone and still not give them access to your life. See, those two opposites can go together and they work perfectly. But even after we've learned how to establish boundaries and how to handle ourselves in accordance, there's still one more battle that a lot of people don't realize that we're fighting. And that's the battle in our hearts. For it is not our job to change how someone else acts or someone else behaves. But it is our job to make sure that we are acting in accordance to the way God wants us to act. So in this next section, we're going to discuss how to overcome disrespect while keeping your heart clean. And we're going to continue by reference part of the Bible. I'm going to be reading from Romans 12:21. So it says, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. So when we're disrespected, we're tempted to act bitter, angry, and revengeful. But instead of choosing that, what if we would choose to be forgiven? You see, what we don't realize is that by forgiving others, instead of giving in to those thoughts and those temptations, we are becoming more like Christ. You know, remember, the person who disrespected you may never apologize for disrespecting you. They may never admit to disrespecting you. But that doesn't mean that we should become the very thing that we hate. We must always be forgiving, I meant. For forgiving means that we're being just like Christ. We're letting go of the anger, we're letting go of the bitterness, and we're letting go of the revenge. Thus, we are keeping our hearts clean. And I promise you, by doing so, you will be living a happier, more fulfilled life. So before we end this video, let's go ahead and summarize everything and realize why turning the other cheek is the best decision that you can make when being disrespected. You know, Jesus was not saying that the disrespect doesn't hurt. And Jesus was not teaching us to allow ourselves to be disrespectful. What Jesus was actually teaching us is how to handle ourselves in an adequate and proper way that pleases God when we're being disrespected. You know, he was teaching us not allow disrespect to change us. He was teaching us not allow disrespect to taint our hearts and to change who we are. Remember, what Jesus was saying is that people are going to act in sinful ways and in sinful behavior. But we shouldn't engage in the same sin. We should be better. We should be like Christ and learn when to speak and speak correctly. Or if you choose that it is better to walk away than walk away. So that ends this video. If you watch to the end, I greatly appreciate it. And if you stick with me to the end, I don't believe it was by accident. You know, Jesus was speaking to you through this video so you can learn how to better deal with disrespect in everyday life. So I want to challenge you with one simple thing. If you reach to the end of this video, I want you to write a declaration of Jesus, and in the comment section put, God is my strength. Now by writing it, it doesn't mean that people are not going to disrespect you, but it means that you're choosing a better way to handle the disrespect. So all right, everyone, I will see you in the next video. I hope you're having a good day. God bless. I love you all. And I'm excited for the next video, so I'll see you then. Peace.
Ladies and gentlemen.